Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, we are going to be going over a spicy one. So, it's there. It's right there on my screen. I can see it. I'm watching it right now as we talk here. It's beautiful, isn't it? You must be wondering, dear viewer, Dread, what in the hell are you talking about? I'm talking about the build on screen. After 4 years of effort, of work, I finally found my white whale. For years, people have been bugging me. Dread, where's my one button builds? Where's my one button build, Dread? Where is it? This build sucks. I can't press more than 3 buttons. I lost both my hands due to an accident. I can no longer press buttons. Give me a build that I can press with 1 button, please. Well, it's here. This is it. My white whale in the flesh. So, before I piss anyone off, let's actually talk about the build. This is Brand of Deception Runic Gale Runemaster. So, Brand of Deception is an ailment at the top of Runemaster that you can get by putting some points into it, and it deals 400 lightning damage over 3 seconds, and it is an elemental damage over time, and it counts as an ailment. So if you apply it with any skill, in this case we're applying it with a lightning skill that costs over 15 mana, it will also gain the benefits of the global more damage from it and the attribute bonuses from that skill that applies it, right? And we can also give it 1% more damage per global shock chance. Right now we're close to around 500%, so we're giving it 500% more damage. This concept of a build is not new. People have messed around with it before, but I've never seen it so smooth. All the other builds, they would utilize like Fireball with converted to Lightning, adding mana cost. And don't get me wrong, that version is cool, but I think we finally one-upped it. It turns out there's some runic invocations you can utilize to make the build even smoother. Now, the idea here is we are channeling our Flame Rush, which is our movement ability, and we're making sure that we channel 3 runes, utilizing, of course, the runic invocation stuff. In this case, we're doing Gone, Ra, Gone, and that will give us access to Runic Gale, which is a lightning skill that costs well over 15 mana, costs like 14, and this essentially gives us a way to proc our Brand of Deception while moving. So as you can tell, it creates like this big AoE around us that contracts and goes out. And as you can tell, it keeps hitting things even if I walk over them. It's kind of like a, I'm trying to think, like a giant Roomba. Think of it like a giant Roomba, right? That contracts and goes around, and we can run into things. The more movement speed we have, the better clear we get, because it can hit one enemy each time. So if we just run faster, we technically have better clear speed. Obviously, I'll have to realize this later on once I get better movement speed, but the concept of it is there, right? Runic Gale is really good. Even Runic Gale even gives us haste, which is kind of funny for free, right? Which means we can go into haste effect boots later on. But all of this combined means that we can actually just hold down Flame Rush, channel it, let go, Runic Gale. Runic Gale kills everything in our way, then we Flame Rush again. That's essentially our entire gameplay loop throughout Monoliths. Now, if you are a nitpicker, you will notice that I have Static Orb and Static on my bar, and I press the buttons every so often. That is because Static is our singular target. Why do we have Static for single target? Well, if you do not know, if you're unaware, Static, the way it works after it got buffed, is it gives you 4% more global damage with it per static charge. So if we get up to 200 static charges and then we utilize our static, it and its ailments that it applies will have 800% more damage. And yes, this does affect our Brand of Deception. On a dummy right now, we're very close to 500k ticks, almost to 600k already, and that's just beautiful already. And we're nowhere near done investing into the build yet, which is great, right? Now, our clear DPS is a little bit lower because Runic Gale doesn't have anywhere near as amount as more damage as Static, but Static is just simply for single target. And then we utilize Static Orb. We make sure the mana cost is less than 15, so we can spam it and get the static charges on hit which means, we can, apply that branded deception on single target without it getting overridden. Because if you don't know, the way ailments work in Last Epoch is it does not work like it's Path of Exile, where the biggest ailment wins. It's more like the last ailment wins. So if I apply a really big, fat, juicy branded deception and I accidentally remove it by adding a different one, that new one will be the new branded deception, meaning that you can actually brick your own brands by playing it improperly. But thankfully, with this build, we don't have too much of an issue with that. Sure, every so often we'll accidentally cast Runic Gale, and that will brick it, but with our static orb, we get back to max static charges very quickly. Now all of that is amazing in All Dread. It's great, right? Don't get me wrong, it's fun. I get it. It's a fun build. Flame rush around. You get to deal dot damage to everything. Now, my corruption is a little bit low, and that is because, of course, I'm still finishing the build. This is not a full build guide. This is me talking about probably one of the best builds I've ever made, and probably going to be one of the best builds I've ever made ever. Now, the thing I really want to tell you is our best in slot weapon is a Plague Bearer Staff. Oh my goodness golly. What in the actual hell, EHG? If you do not know, they recently buffed Plague Bearer's Staff to have a line on it that says, you deal 20% more damage over time to plagued enemies. There aren't many more damage modifiers for Brand of Deception that are just global like this, meaning this is just 20% more damage. We also want to be using a two-handed weapon anyways, as Exalted T7 Shock Chance is a very large amount of damage. It goes all the way up to like 190%, and it's also on a staff, which gives us elemental damage over time. And very specifically, for some reason, this is one of the staff bases that don't give you -3 mana cost of spells, meaning it doesn't brick your static, which means it ends up literally being your best in slot weapon. Now, all we got to do is just figure out defenses, which is just a simple vessel setup, right? The only problem with the vessel setup on this build is 2 issues. Number 1, instead of grabbing health regen from Lagan, we grab shock chance because damage is good. We ignore the health regen, which would be a lot of ward, per second, but we don't really care. And then the second problem is the node at the top of Rune Master that gives you 15% of your health regen as ward per second is still bugged. It is still giving you 10 times the amount of ward it's supposed to be giving you. Seems very familiar. I think EHG needs to go back to 2nd grade so they can learn how decimal places work. That's a joke, by the way. Don't take me seriously. I love EHG, don't get me wrong. It's just sometimes it's kind of funny, right? Now, this means that if I put points into that, I would gain 150% of my health regen gained as ward per second. Yes, I tested it. It's absolutely disgusting, and it will remain off for the entirety of this build probably until the bug is fixed, sadly. But eventually, once that bug is fixed, you can easily just yoink those nodes and have even more health regen gained as ward. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all I wanted to say today. There will be a build guide on this build. I just want to talk about, how excited I am. This is why I spend so long playing all those bad builds. Everyone's like, hey, Dread, why do you play things like Harvest? Why do you hate yourself? Why do you play things like Smelter's Wrath? Why do you play all these bad builds? Well, for the chance that I might stumble upon something great. Like, for instance, this build started out as a Retaliate Rune Master utilizing Static Shell to proc static on enemies as you're standing still, and then use Brand of Deception for damage. And it turned out it was pretty bad. But then I had to mess around with the build, try to salvage it, and this is what I ended up with. Sometimes even the best of successes require just a little bit of failure. With all that being said, this has been Dread. Off to go make the full build guide on this. Bye. That'll be like when I push like corruption, by the way. Bye.